Hello, I'm Reverend Mike, and I'm here to answer your questions about religion. Today's topic is based on a couple of viewer questions. Was there anything satanic to the hysteria of playing rock and roll records backward back in the 80s? Is Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game satanic? They have monster manuals that list different demons and devils, etc. Well, various forms of media have been blamed for everything from bad behavior to violent crime. I'll go over each type of media and give my personal opinion for each. This, of course, is going to be personal opinion um, based on research and personal experience. Of course, there's no scriptural evidence one way or the other. Now, before we start, I want to make it very clear that just because a book or movie mentions something evil or satanic, it doesn't mean that it is satanic. If just a mention of Satan made something satanic, then just about every Christian text would be satanic, right? Because Satan is mentioned in them. We all know that's ridiculous. So right there, we have to separate a mention of Satan from making something actually satanic. We'll start with books. Many books have been burned because someone didn't like what was inside them. This is a tragedy because your first impressions on what is or isn't evil could be flawed. I'll give you an example. During the Spanish conquest of the Aztecs, many of the Aztec codices were burned for being idolatry, even though the great majority of those books had nothing to do with their gods. Priceless historical and cultural information was lost forever in those texts. One of them could have held a treatment or cure for one of the diseases that plague our modern society. Who knows? One of them could have had the cure for the common cold. But they were burned because of ignorance. Another good example is the Harry Potter books. You got some religious people freaking out because it has magic in it. Doesn't matter that there's nothing satanic in it whatsoever. The fact that most of the magic in it is used for the benefit of mankind, not its detriment. It's just ridiculous to call that satanic and burn them, which has actually happened. There have been people who have gotten together and burned Harry Potter books. They're about the most harmless thing you could possibly get. For goodness sake, you've got Disney movies that have magic in them. And it's most of the time not evil. It's fairy godmothers helping women find the love of their lives, that sort of thing. It's ridiculous to call it satanic. What about games? This category has gotten a lot of publicity. Whether we're talking about violent video games or Dungeons and Dragons, there are still religious people who are convinced that these things are evil. We'll start with role-playing games like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. It is a game where you pretend to be a warrior, wizard, or other fantasy character and act out scenarios, usually to fight monsters and collect treasure. It's like pretending to be in The Lord of the Rings or Conan the Barbarian, but you and your fellow players are the heroes. Because some of the monsters they fight can include demons and even pagan gods, the game was labeled satanic. This label was reinforced by some confused kids taking the game way too seriously, and some kids were hurt or even killed. Of course, the game was blamed, but this kind of tragedy has less to do with the game and more to do with mental illness. The game didn't make those kids do anything. Those kids were just inspired by a game to do harm. Video games are also blamed for violence in our society. Most people who play violent video games do not become violent themselves. However, people who are already violent could theoretically take inspiration from a video game. It's not the game that's at fault, but how we treat mental illness. Magic the Gathering is a card game that has gotten a lot of press as well. The game consists mainly of creature and spell cards that are used against opponent cards. The creature cards are summoned so that they can do battle with each other. But these are just complicated playing cards. There's no real summoning going on here, no evil conspiracy, no Satanism. They're no more satanic than a normal deck of playing cards. Anyone who says otherwise has never seen the game played. They just believe ignorant paranoia that has been spread by word of mouth. I have seen the game played with my own eyes, and I can assure you there is nothing remotely evil about it. Music is another category that gets a lot of hate. I grant you, some lyrics can get pretty sexualized, and there are songs that describe violence, but again, the songs describe these things. They are typically not meant to encourage it. There are cases where people claim that vinyl records played backward revealed some satanic message. This was a real big thing back in the 1980s. I can guarantee you that if these messages were intentional, they were done just to mess with people. Alleged subliminal messages are not going to turn anyone satanic. It's very likely the messages were put there specifically to mess with people who were freaking out about this sort of thing. Film and television violence is also blamed for real-world violence almost as much as video games. There are people that will emulate what they see in movies. In the shallow end, this might include quoting lines from the program or even imitating character voices like Yoda. I've seen kids play fight outside of a theater after seeing a martial art movie. But most of the time, these kids are just play fighting. They don't seriously hurt each other. They're not inspired to violence. Only people who are already unbalanced emulate the violence they see on film or television. Nothing in the media is satanic or overtly evil, except in the rare instance where it's created by somebody who claims to be a Satanist. But Satanists are not what a lot of Christians think they are. I have an entire video dedicated to the misconceptions around Satanism. To quickly recap that video, Satanism is essentially 99% of the time extreme atheism that tends to mock Christianity because they're sick of Christians pushing their beliefs on them. Mental illness is the real culprit here. But it's easier to point fingers at a book, game, or TV show, easier to burn things, easier to protest things, than to actually help people who need medical help, psychiatric help. Unfortunately, hate is typically a better motivator than compassion, and that is a shame. Even if you got rid of all the media, violence would not be diminished. Remember, the Son of Sam serial killer was reportedly told to commit violence by a barking dog. No media involved. The media is not the cause of violence. Humanity is. We've been violent since the beginning of time. The Roman games were far more violent than anything we have today. So violence is nothing new to us. Instead of trying to outlaw every bit of media we don't like, we need to help people who need psychological help before they turn violent. Thank you for watching this video. Please click like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment or question. Who knows, your question might even become the basis of a future video. Be good to each other. We are all in this together.